Hey, my name is Bex, and okay, it's been a while, but listen, I've done a lot. I've done quite a bit. What's this stuff behind me? Ignore it. We'll talk about that later. So you'll never guess what I added. Minecart with dispenser. Check it. And it works. It does everything you would expect a dispenser to do. It can even equip you with armor. Check this out. So why did I add the minecart with dispenser? Why? That's such a weird thing to add. Why did I do that? Well, because it's more of a proof of concept that I've had for a while that I think could have some really cool applications, and I just want to finally put it out there and see what you guys can do with this idea. Now, dispenser minecarts are kind of just a band-aid solution to something that Mojang has been admittedly procrastinating on for a little while, in my opinion, and that is what to do about TNT duplication. Now, the reason Mojang has not patched TNT duplication is because they do not have an alternative to things like tunnel borers and world eaters without TNT duplicators, because there are no movable tile entities in the game. So as opposed to Bedrock Edition, where you can push dispensers around and therefore build world eaters using those, in Minecraft the only solution is currently TNT duplication. However, I believe a dispenser with minecart solves this problem. Here is a basic setup for a tunnel borer. You could probably hook this up to use with a world eater, but the basic concept here is just you load up the minecart dispenser with TNT, and every time you move this, it gets powered again by the activator rail that it's on and sets out a TNT. Now, the minecart with dispenser will always face up when you place it, no matter what, and that's just because, well, simply put, every other direction has a minecart in the way. So here is your minecart with dispenser. Now, I've also added an item which is not in the creative inventory, and that's because I simply wouldn't know how to add it to the creative inventory. But let's check it out in the Nether. Did you know you can make 2x1 Nether portals in chopping block? When bartering with piglins, there is a chance of getting an item called the Fortress Compass. Now, the Fortress Compass is a pre-made compass that is locked to the location of a Nether Fortress. And this is how you are intended to find Nether Fortresses, especially without being able to really freely traverse the Nether. You're very limited to the bridges that you build. And the process of getting this item to work was actually really interesting and, in my opinion, really cool. So I'm gonna rewind it and show you the footage I have of that process. Okay, so here's the plan. I'm going to use a compass with lodestone components to lock the compass to a Nether fortress, but I need to be able to locate the actual fortress itself and the coordinates of that fortress to give to the compass. So here's what I'm going to do. You might be thinking that we will start with a compass, but no, that's not what we'll do. We're gonna start with a map. On that map, we are going to have map decorations. We'll call this fortress type red X. It really doesn't matter. It does, how did this work before? So I was being a little silly. So we want a function here. Instead of set components, we want the exploration map component. And the destination is going to be Minecraft Fortress, and it's going to say that it can't find this. Don't worry, we'll do that later. And the decoration is going to be just a red X. And then if we want more components, we can add some stuff here. I'm just going to add a custom data component, give it the fortress map. It's going to be a boolean, and it is going to be true. Now that we have our map, we can download this. So now if we reload and do a quick loot give at s loot nether tweaks fortress map, we get a little fortress map. Cool. Awesome. Am I going crazy? Why is the red X tilted? Whatever. So now we want to convert this map to a compass. How do we do that? So we are setting the item ID to a compass. Then we are modifying the components to have its target dimension set to the nether and then lock it to a coordinate, which is just initially 0, 0, 0. So then it grabs the X value from the X value of the decoration on the map. It simply sets the Y value to 64 because that doesn't matter. And then it sets the Z value to the Z value from the map decorations. And then okay, so the map to compass function appears to be working. So if we throw this map, it does not get turned into a compass. We'll just force it to do that. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. So it still has the map ID. All right, let's try this again. And then I throw this. Okay, it's still a map, but that's fine. Okay, now that is a compass. However, it's not pointing anywhere. So I think what we have to do is all of this NBT right here, instead of getting stored directly into the item, it needs to get stored into a storage and then copied back into the item. So that's what I'm gonna do. All right, and now with that done, we are going to reload, spawn ourselves a new fortress map, throw it on the ground, run our map to compass command, and it's not a compass yet. Time to troubleshoot. There we go. Something's happening now. Yes. This right here. That was doing it. Now if I reload, yes, okay, it appears to work. This is a compass, and we are currently a little bit broken. However, if we run this little data get, we have all this neat stuff. Data modify entity at s item dot components set from storage nether tweaks fortress compass root dot components. I believe this will work. Once again, we get our fortress map, we throw it on the ground, and we tell it to become a compass, and it's a compass. It works. It freaking works. Components, Minecraft, item name, set value, and then here we get to do some fun stuff. A text component, it's going to be a translate string, and then that becomes the value that we put in here. So now we do that, we reload, and very last time, we give ourselves a fortress map, and we turn it into a compass. It's still, the item name is Okay, so I did some looking up, and apparently this is intended that if a compass has the item name component, but also the lodestone tracker component, the item name will just always be lodestone compass. And the only way around it is by using the custom name component. So, dang. Oh well. But hey, the compasses are now implemented. We just need to actually make them automatically convert when they spawn. Now, a question I get a lot in my Discord server is, hey Bex, how do you get lava in chopping block to make a cobblestone generator? And the answer is this. This is the intended method. You find a nether fortress, get rid of any magma cubes that are nearby, and you pick up this lava with a bucket right here. Every nether fortress has one of these, and that is currently the intended method to get lava. Yes, it blocks a lot of automatic farms behind the mid-game. However, that just makes that automatic farming much more satisfying to get to, knowing that you really worked for it. Plus, anyone can get dripstone by simply using an alchemy reactor on stone and then crushing it with an ascended block breaker. And then you can just use that dripstone to farm the lava with cauldrons. Also, remember the stone chunks from the last couple episodes? Yeah, they can be thrown now. Throw rocks at phantoms! I just realized my shaders weren't on. Man, I have been running into crazy tech problems in the last week. Please be patient with me. I have autism. So you know how people call the Sniffer useless because it kind of has nothing going for it? It just digs up 2 seeds and then you don't really use it ever again? Well, check this out. I'm gonna tick sprint for 1 day. And the Sniffer's sniffing loot table has been updated to include all of the tree seeds, as well as cactus seeds, sugarcane seeds, and sweet berry seeds. And of course, these seeds just work as a way to plant these different plants. Bye-bye, little Sniffer. Call me Billy Mays because wait, there's more. Remember all this bullcrap that was behind me earlier? Well, this is the new version of Alchemy that I have come up with, complete with a full GUI made of dialogues, baby! Alright, so how does this work? So Alchemy works with 4 different types of magic. There's Restoration, which is setting blocks back to their original state. There is alteration, which is changing blocks to similar blocks. There is acceleration, which is changing blocks to a future state. And there is augmentation, which is changing a block into a version of it which has some kind of energy augmented into it. Restoration is able to do things like put the bark back on stripped logs, it is able to uncrack bricks, it's able to put grass on dirt and nylium on netherrack, and it's able to mass de-age copper. Alteration is able to change stone types to other stone types, same with polished variants. It is also able to turn sand into other kinds of sand, and allows you to change the color of any dye, but not of any dyed block. Acceleration is able to do things such as grow crops from their item form. It is able to mass age copper, and it is able to speed up amethyst farming by enlarging amethyst buds. And augmentation can create budding amethyst, it can create a creaking heart, it can turn prismarine into sea lanterns, it can turn sticks into breeze or blaze rods, and it is a cheaper way to turn sulfur into potent sulfur. Now, the way you control which type of magic is going to be applied to the items you want to apply it to is with a recipe. And the recipes in alchemy consist of a metal, a flour, and a dust. Now, this is where player experimentation is going to come in, because you are going to have to find combinations of powders, dusts, and flours that create the alchemy recipes that you want. So for the metal, it can be any ingot. For the flour, it can be any of these 16 flours. And for the dust, it can be any of these 5 dusts. Now, for example, the easiest restoration recipe for me to remember is a gold ingot, a dandelion, and a glowstone dust, because everything is yellow. Once you choose the items for your recipe, it will tell you what kind of recipe you have created. Once you found a recipe that works, you just hit the create button, and it will bring up a dialog of eligible item stacks in your inventory, as well as the counts of those items. So for example, if you wanted to transform exactly 41 blocks into another block, you could set down a stack of 41 in your inventory, and then choose it based on the stack size later on in this menu. So once you're here, you'll just want to select your item stack that you want to transform, and then it will give you the options of blocks that you can transform it into. So here we'll just do this exposed copper, and now that item stack has been transformed, and a durability has been used from our Philosopher's Stone. And I want to give a big shout out to a member of my Discord server, Apac, for helping out with this screen right here that shows the player inventory. This took quite a bit of figuring out, and I wouldn't have been able to do it if it wasn't for Apac. So big thank you to Apac for this. The Philosopher's Stone has 64 uses, so it can be used to transform 64 individual stacks of items before you need to create a new one. Which then begs the question, how do you create a Philosopher's Stone? And that is a question that I have yet to come up with an answer to. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, and it does make sense. Bex, why can't you just use the old recipe for the Philosopher's Stone from the original chopping block? And the answer to that lies in this block right here, glowing obsidian. In chopping block, custom blocks that you place down, like the magic machines and glowing obsidian, are actually barriers that get replaced using a fill command. And I do this to maintain complete parity with how blocks are placed in the vanilla game, since if you use an item frame or a spawn egg, those have different rules on where they can be used and placed than regular blocks. However, in the original chopping block, this was not exactly true. Every block was a barrier that got replaced, except for glowing obsidian. Glowing obsidian was actually a light level 15 block that got replaced. And because it was the only block that used a light level 15 to detect it being placed, it had a unique ID that I could target in recipes, similar to what I'm doing with stone chunks being infested cobblestone. However, now glowing obsidian is just a barrier, and that means that I cannot target it in a recipe without also targeting every other custom block in chopping block. Now, could I just re-implement the light level 15 thing? Yeah, probably. But the reason I moved away from that was because it was kind of spaghetti code, and it made maintaining the code base a little difficult. Plus, it was just a straight up disparity between how the blocks worked in general. So I need to come up with a new recipe. Or alternatively, could this be the drop from a boss, perhaps? Perhaps I could bank on some nostalgia bait. After all, it's not like Chopping Block hasn't done that already. But this is what I want to hear from you guys this episode. What do you think of how the Philosopher Stone should be obtained? Because I don't want it to be too difficult, because it's not really as overpowered as it was in the original Chopping Block. However, I do still think it should be locked to a point where it feels rewarding to finally be able to do things like this. And speaking of audience interaction and engagement, I have heard your feedback. Chopping block will remain challenging. That's it. I'm not gonna make it easier. Now, I do want to come back and add things to the early game, to add content to the early game, because it is currently so boring. However, it is now time to focus on the mid game like I have been doing, and then at some point I also need to get back to the end game, no Avengers. And I think that's going to be lots and lots and lots of fun. So now we need more for the player to do, more for them to build, more for them to try and achieve. So what are these goals? What are the long-term goals? That's a great question, but that is a question that will have to be answered probably in the next episode, because this one's over. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like, comment, whatever. My name is Bex. Thanks for watching, and as always, thanks for watching. Alright, bye.